Welcome to The Undisruptible. I'm your host, Ilan Divon, and on this podcast, powered by Divon Academy, you're going to learn how to future-proof your career by developing skills that technology cannot disrupt and that will make you an asset to any job or company. If you're an HR leader looking to build exceptional teams or a young professional looking to build an amazing career, you're in the right place. So turn up that dial and let's dig in. Hey folks, if you're job searching right now, if you're looking for that job, that next career pivot, if you want to grow in your company or in an industry or change to a new industry, this episode is for you. You're going to hear from a global talent expert and trailblazer on what it takes to stand out, land that first or next job, and get ahead in today's economy. The best way to describe our guest today, Jay Rosenzweig, is Renaissance man. In fact, Forbes describes Jay as a man of many talents, and I have to agree. He is an internationally renowned social impact entrepreneur and the founder of Rosenzweig & Company, where he specializes in designing, building, and attracting world-class teams for world-class companies around the world. Jay is also an investor. He's a humanitarian who's been immersed in human rights issues for well over 2 decades. He is a trained lawyer, a leadership strategist, a songwriter and singer, believe it or not. Yes, you can find him on Spotify. And most of all, he's a family man. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get undisruptible. Here's the thing, Jay. People love to see, as you know, the polished product. They love to see the end result, but they don't like seeing the becoming, the grit and the grind of the process and all those things that you got to do when nobody's looking, when nobody's watching. So I'd love to start, if you can tell our listeners about the hardest moment or time in your career when you couldn't see the road ahead, when you doubted yourself, when you felt like giving up. If you could take us back to that experience, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? And how did you pull through?
I feel that every day is to be cherished. Number one, and as the Dalai Lama has once said, there are only 2 days you can't do anything about, and that's yesterday and tomorrow. So you have to embrace today with everything you have, with all of your heart, and try to make an impact as best you can in contributing to the world. And if you look at the world in that way, as I do, life seems a lot less daunting. But every day for me, like anyone else, we all have our struggles. So I struggle, this very moment to juggle all the various responsibilities that I currently have, to family, most important, to business. Where am I going to get my next gig from a cash flow point of view? How am I going to manage it all? I have an International Women's Day event on Clubhouse, a 2-day event. How do I handle that? So, I don't know if there's any one particular moment, but there are always things to be anxious about in life. And I'm definitely not one who's been shielded from that, but you need to approach, I think, everything with a level of joy and step by step, and not get overly high, not get overly low, because there will be those who will criticize you when you're in the arena, as it were. But I'd rather be in the arena and rise above any of that. And you also can't get affected, just as you can't get affected by the critics. You can't be too affected by the praise at the same time, because if you go either way, you're bound to be disappointed, and you're bound to get put off kilter.
It's kind of like juggling, moxie and humility, and juggling, two different attitudes.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, like humility cuts both ways as well. It's important to understand that there's no one above you, that we're all equal, but there's also no one below you. So in a sense, true humility is true wisdom. And And true humility, in an interesting way, gives you a lot of confidence to go out and conquer the world, because we're all the same. There's nothing to be intimidated about.
So I love that. And for full disclosure to our audience, you have an amazing, interesting, eclectic academic journey you went on. You studied philosophy.
Yeah.
Which kind of gives you that interesting background, because not a lot of people think about these things. But I'm wondering, when you were starting out, if you can bring our viewers back to when you're in your 20s, you graduate, and there's uncertainty and nothing's given to you, right? And you had a job, and then you decided you wanted to have your own boutique practice. You wanted to start your own business, and that's a daunting thing. So what was going through your mind when you leave behind the safety of a great company, the benefits, the paychecks, the security, to start to go on this unknown path? How did you deal with that, and what was going through your mind?
Well, it goes back to my grounding, my upbringing, some innatism, back to philosophy. It's nature and nurture. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My father was an electrical contractor. He built an office out of a piece of our basement, and for better or for worse, we were always immersed with business discussions, even at the dinner table. So entrepreneurialism is really in my blood. And what happened was, I was in law for a little while. I actually worked at the law firm that probably most prominently represented people who were wrongfully convicted. The firm did a lot of the very well-known Canadian cases like Guy Pomeroy, Milgard. And the firm was able to actually be successful in a lot of cases, largely because DNA technology was becoming more and more reliable. But it wasn't a dream of mine to full-on practice law for the long term. And I saw a business opportunity in the talent strategy, executive team building space, not with Korn Ferry, actually. It was with a boutique firm. And so I joined that firm, took to the business really quickly. And the firm ultimately was bought by Korn Ferry, which is the largest firm in our sector globally. So great experience for me, young guy, firm was acquired. Suddenly I'm one of the youngest partners globally at the world's largest firm, which was a great learning experience. And life was good, to your point, leveraging off of the brand, etc. But I saw a number of inefficiencies in the big firm. And, if you couple that with the fact that I'm an entrepreneur by nature, I was always thinking, if I had my own firm, I would do things this way. Or if I had my own firm, I'd do things that way. So ultimately, like almost from day one, not that I'm a disloyal person. I stayed on with the boutique and Korn Ferry for quite a while, but I always knew I needed to start my own thing. So that's what I did. I started this firm to provide really better and more customized solutions to my clients and compete with the Korn Ferries of this world. They're sort of like a big five in our sector. And the rest is history. I've been very, very fortunate to have developed a very high-end firm that's doing work now all around the world.
It's, needless to say, the world is a crazy competitive place right now, more than ever before. If we're talking to young professionals right now, and there's plenty of them graduating or just, in their 20s, going for interviews, what are the tips you can share with young professionals? What are things you look for that make someone really stand out and be memorable in an interview?
There are roles which require technical skills, and it will always be that way, although a lot of those roles will be eliminated because of AI, etc. But the leadership roles, while they require a certain amount of technical skills, the technical skills are becoming less and less important. So as automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning continues to overtake us humans, there will be very little to differentiate us and machines. In fact, machines are superior to us in a lot of ways, from a performance perspective, from a speed perspective, from an efficiency perspective. So then the question is, what's left for us? There's one thing that will always be left for us, in my opinion, and that is our hearts, our spirits, and therefore our creativity, and therefore the emotional intelligence that a machine will never be able to replicate. So I'm recommending to young people, if they're really not sure what they want to do with their life, even though it sounds so impractical, do a philosophy degree, rather than a science degree. Because I believe that moving forward, the thing that will differentiate us and the areas where we will thrive, which we've always intuitively actually thrived based on emotional intelligence versus IQ, but even more so, that is the key to success moving forward.
Yuval Noah Harari, the author of *Sapiens* and 21 Questions, and he's been talking about this for a while as well. I think really to your point that AI and technology is, again, stripping away and taking away all the heavy lifting in terms of IQ jobs and computation and analysis, data analysis, but it's those more intangible people skills. And so the question is, getting back to interviews and identifying world-class teams and talent, that is something you obviously have a keen eye for. Who are the people you remember and why? What are the things they may do or say, or how do they present themselves in such a way that they stand out?
Well, first of all, the ability to adapt and evidence of cases where individuals have had to pivot and adapt and do so really successfully is something that's very, very important to me. I'm typically fascinated by people who, beyond their particular role, have excelled in areas that might be unrelated, but again, speaks to their character, whether it be excelling at a high level in athletics, in philanthropy. And I don't mean philanthropy from the point of view of cutting checks. I mean philanthropy from the point of view of developing movements that move millions of people. Things that are really different. Individuals who came up with ideas that would previously have been considered impossible, but accomplishing the impossible. These are the kinds of individuals that I not only am drawn to and attracted to from a candidate standpoint, but these are the kinds of individuals that I've connected to on a mentorship and friendship basis as well. These are the people who inspire me to do more.
To flip the equation now, I mean, you obviously, when you place people, you want them to stay. And one of the biggest challenges companies have is keeping their top talent. And more so, I imagine with millennials and Gen Z, this is the future of the workforce. 75% of the workforce is going to be millennials and Gen Z by, I think, 2025. And they are known as a job hopping generation, right? They're moving every 2-3 years. How can companies, from your experience, this is not towards talking to HR people, how can they keep and how do you retain top talent?
I remember when I first got into this business, the first rule we were taught is if there's a resume with somebody who's jumped every 2 to 3 years, throw it in the trash bin, right? It no longer applies. If you assess that bringing on an individual, given their skill set, even for a year, so you may do a cost benefit analysis. Wow, this person's jumped every 2-3 years, but they've made massive impacts with each of their steps along the way. And I need this person to do X. I hope they stay forever. But even if I had them for a year or two, cost benefit, the benefit outweighs the cost. You want to look at them pretty seriously. You want to do proper references, etc. But look, I mean, in terms of retaining them, it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? Your compensation has to be right. You have to incentivize them. You have to understand each candidate has their own things that drive them. Maybe lifestyle, which used to be a bad word, right? Maybe lifestyle is important to them. Maybe incentivizing them by saying, hey, I don't mind if you're only working 20 hours a week, but here's what I need from you, each quarter. Here are the deliverables. I mean, each case is different, and you have to tailor your approach to each and every individual that you're hiring and do the various cost benefits analyses that would be inputs into your decision as to whether or not to hire the person, and do your best to develop. For some people, culture is important. For others, it's like, I don't care about culture. I just want to do my thing in the corner and do my software development work, and I love what the business is doing. But I don't want to be bothered to do these these 1 day offsites in Niagara Falls. Others wouldn't be able to live in an environment where there's not camaraderie. You fit the person to what you're trying to accomplish and to the culture you're trying to drive as well.
We are living now in an age, the pandemic has done many things, but it's accelerated processes in the workforce, which are going to remain with us, it seems, for forever. For example, remote work. And remote work, you got people working in silos. And a lot of companies now have challenges with, well, how do we build team cohesion? How do we create that kind of culture when everyone's working in a silo? Any advice, tips, thoughts around how we address this juggernaut?
It's a major problem. Nothing will ever be a substitute for the in-person camaraderie within the team, and even the spontaneous ideas which sprout from being able to pop into someone's office. So we'll never be able to replicate that, I don't think, virtually. But we'll have to do our best on these kinds of Zoom calls and virtual calls. I think that artificial intelligence, as it becomes even more and more real looking and intimate feeling, will play a role. I think in the meantime, over communication, if you're not actually literally next door to be able to pop in anytime, over communication is probably really, really important at this stage during these days of quote unquote lockdown. But it'd be very difficult to replicate the human interaction and the ideas that flow spontaneously when you're living with one another.
What do you think about, well, this is kind of a giveaway. It's what training and development, the role of learning and development, training, coaching. How do you see that factoring in now into just the overall benefits and things that companies now focus on to make sure that there's that cohesion?
Well, I've seen actually that there's been a big uptick in all areas of leadership development, coaching, training, and even on a personal level. I think we all know that there's a pent-up mental health crisis because of this past year and just overall therapy. And I think speaking with third parties about all of these issues is really healthy and more important than ever.
So let's pivot to something I know you are very passionate about, very, very passionate about, and have been leading. And I really, hats off, because so many people get into this field now because it's sexy, it's appealing, it's the right, there's all this pressure, and companies are pressured into diversity and inclusion. You were doing this, you were advocating this decades before with the Rosenzweig report, 2006. Beyond the fact that equity and inclusion is the right thing to do for a company, beyond the moral imperative, which we all know and understand now in this age, it's the right thing to do. Why is it also the right business thing to do?
Well, study after study has shown, and if you look up all past McKinsey studies and Harvard Business School studies, that the greater diversity around the table, around the boardroom table, the greater the opportunity for creativity. And the greater the opportunity for creativity, the better the opportunity to grow a business and to affect the bottom line in very positive ways. And it only stands to reason, right? If you've got 10, 70-year-old white guys with the exact same experience sitting around a table talking about issues related to how do we engage consumers to buy more of our products, it stands to reason that they would do a lot worse than if you had people of color around the table, women, people from different cultures, etc., because they represent the consumers that these businesses are looking to attract.
It seems so obvious, and yet it's amazing that for decades, companies didn't think this way. So what are you encouraged? What are you finding? Obviously, you've been putting out the Rosenzweig report from 2006 in terms of more gender equality, and I know you're involved and you helped sort of co-found Move the Dial. What is your feeling around gender equality in the workforce and where the needle is moving?
Well, we're about to release our 16th annual women's report. And look, the numbers aren't great. What we do is we look at the 100 largest publicly traded companies in Canada, and all the publicly traded companies are required to disclose the salaries of their top executives. It's typically about 5 individuals that they each disclose. Sometimes they disclose 6 or 7. So I think the pool this year was something like 544. And the first year we began doing the study, we looked at the percentage of women in these executive cadres, as we've been doing for the last 16 years. And we discovered that 4.6% of all the 500 plus top jobs were held by women. We thought the numbers would be low. We didn't realize that they would be that low. If you fast forward to today, the good news is the numbers have doubled. The bad news is that we're still under 10%, which is just remarkable to me, that those numbers are so incredibly low. And we began focusing a little bit more, although we've always kept our eye on this issue, and I've been active in this area in terms of economic empowerment and the like. If you look at BIPOC, the percentage is even exponentially lower than that. So there remains a lot of work to be done. And what I've committed to doing year after year is putting a mirror up to corporate Canada so that they understand so that the world understands what the real raw data entails, and also bring in influencers from around the world, from various walks of life, to contribute to the report, to provide quotes and endorsements, so as to amplify the discussion and bring it within Canada, but well beyond, in terms of a broader discussion of the importance of diversity and inclusion.
So let's get a bit more personal in terms of little things you can share with young professionals out there that can really make a difference in their life right now. So what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew, and you really wish you knew in your 20s?
Well, I always intuitively had this in me. I wasn't, even as a child, I wasn't a quote unquote follower. I didn't get too affected by worrying about other people's opinions, but even more so now as I've grown older, I realize that you really have to do you. You really have to chase your dreams. Nobody understands you as well as you do. Be careful about how much advice you take. It's always important to have data that you can input, but trust your own instincts, because no one knows you as well as you do.
I imagine you're certainly an anomaly in this case, because the problem, you obviously have a super high level of self-awareness and you had it from a younger age. The challenge, I think, with 20-year-olds and most young professionals is they don't really know who they are. And so they're looking outside for that validation and for figuring stuff out. Any tips you could share for a young professional? Well, how would they know they're moving in the right direction? How do they start uncovering their own kind of truth?
So what I would say is it's a very healthy thing to be experimenting and to be trying things, and it's not typically a normal thing, or it's out of the norm that one should, from the day they're born, know that they want to be a doctor or a builder or a car mechanic, whatever it might be. So the journey of experimenting is perfectly normal and it's perfectly natural, and it should be enjoyed. I never imagined I would be in the leadership strategy space. I just let life evolve naturally. I always was one that, to this day, noticed when there was a window opening and peeked my head through those windows to see if it was an opportunity worth looking at. But treat life as an adventure. I know it's cliche, but enjoy that journey. It really is a truism to me. And you find your way. Never be impatient or worried that, well, this buddy of mine from high school is already settled and they made a whole bunch of money on Bitcoin, and look where I am, I'm a loser. Everyone has their time, everyone has their moment, everyone has their calling. It's not a competition. It's very important to understand that life is not a competition. We're all in our own individual journeys, and we all have our own individual time to shine. being patient with the journey and embracing the journey rather than fighting it and being insecure about it is something really, really important as a life skill.
Love that. Love that. Such good advice. And I think the challenge that young people and all of us face today is that we're living in this culture of comparison, right? Where you look on your cell phone, you've got all the social media feeds, and you're seeing not just what your inner circle, but like millions of people across the world are doing. And you feel, so there's that natural tendency to compare. But I love what you're saying about just avoiding that and just staying true to yourself, knowing that your time will come, having the long-term approach. These are things that we try to actually develop and instill. These are similar messages and things we try to instill at Devon Academy, is developing that long-term approach.
I think rather than comparing or even avoiding, like I know there's this risk that social media can be potentially depressing or deflating, but I take a little bit of a different approach. Rather than comparing or avoiding, there's so much to learn from observing. Renee and I are brought up in families where we're happy for others. So celebrate and be inspired by the happy things that you see people accomplishing. And also, understand that, a lot of these Instagram feeds where it's all dominated by being on the beach and sipping expensive champagne, it's BS anyway. Everybody knows that it's not possible for an individual to only being living a life of nirvana, right? It's just not even realistic. So, take everything in context rather than even avoiding or definitely worrying about comparing.
I'm sure, I got to believe anyone successful has habits, has rituals, has things that they do on a daily level that keeps them, whether in shape, but keeps their mind focused. Habits are so important. Rituals are so important. What is the one habit, if you could share one habit, one ritual you do every day or almost every day that you believe has contributed to your success?
I try to block off time in the morning to exercise. So I essentially exercise 7 days a week. One day is cardio, running. The other day is strength. I have a lot of experience doing boxing exercise, etc. So I do either running on one day. The next day is pull-ups, chin-ups, dips, push-ups, sit-ups. So every single day I try to carve out that amount of time. Ideally, even if it's a half hour to an hour, ideally in the morning. And the other thing that I do is when I have a little bit of a break, I go to the piano. And that's a really soothing and spiritual thing for me, just to be able to go to the piano, sometimes just to play, sometimes to sing. Maybe I'll write a song, but I really enjoy going to the piano. I also love fresh air, going for a walk, and just spending a lot of time with the family.
What time do you wake up in the morning? Are you an early riser?
Pre-COVID, I was up every morning at 6, and I was coming home pretty late. During COVID, my schedule has shifted a little bit. I wake up a little bit later now, and I'm going to bed a little bit later. I'm actually working later into the night, but my day is chopped up more because families popping out. I'm doing family stuff. It's more integrated. So the routine has kind of changed a little bit, other than making sure I exercise. And actually there's more music because I have the piano here. There's more music, there's more family, there's more exercise, but I'm working just as hard as ever. It's just different. It's a little bit of a different routine.
So just a final question on that, just to build on that, it's because it's harder now to have that discipline. You're at home. Any tips to our listeners on how to remain disciplined when you have those distractions? You can go to the fridge, you can surf the internet, you can talk to your family, you can, you don't have the stimulation of the office. How do you keep, disciplined and keep that work ethic working from home?
I just do it. I'm just super focused. I'm just really, really stimulated by the work that I'm doing. So I think I think most importantly, find yourself a vocation that's extremely stimulating to you, and you'll never have a problem with focus.
You know what? I think that is a great way to kind of cap the conversation. Is and so many great ones have said that. Just find. Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. Right, follow that one thing that makes you excited, that brings light to your eyes, that makes you get out of bed with energy, and you won't have to worry about anything. I mean, you'll be excited to get up. And so it's clear that you, Jay, are doing that. You're living that dream and enjoying the journey.
Thank you. And thank you for inspiring. And I'm thrilled to be an advisor to the Devon Academy.
It is an honor and a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much. And looking forward to seeing you again real soon. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this podcast and discussion as much as I did. To increase your arsenal of career tips and strategies, and to learn how to future-proof your career or company in an age of rampant disruption, subscribe to this channel by visiting devonacademy.com/podcast. Yes, we are just getting started. I've said that before. I will say it again because there's so much more to come. So stay tuned, stay safe, and as always, stay the course. See you soon, guys.